A maintenance worker rolled the first steel bed frame through the rear doors of Willow Ridge Care Center and pushed it down a short loading ramp. The casters struck the pavement, turned sideways, and stopped. Then another frame came out behind it. By noon, 180 old bed frames stood in rows beside the nursing home's service building. Their motors, mattresses, cords, and padded parts had already been removed. What remained was scratched steel, bent brackets, faded labels, and long rails that no longer fit the rooms Willow Ridge was modernizing. The care center offered every frame to two Amish brothers if they would remove the entire lot before Friday. Levi Esch lifted one rail and looked along its edge. His younger brother Aaron measured the distance between two rows of factory-made slots. Maintenance director Paul Mercer watched them from the doorway. "They were beds for almost 30 years, he said. "I do not know what else they can be." Levi placed the rail on their wagon. By spring, campground owners from 4 counties would be calling the brothers about that same steel. But the first thing Levi built from it would crack before one customer could sit down. Levi was 46 and ran a metal shop outside New Holland, Pennsylvania. Aaron was 41 and worked with wood beside him. Their father had repaired wagons and taught them that one narrow point usually carried more force than it should. Willow Ridge had cleaned and decommissioned the frames before offering the bare steel. Levi still rejected fabric, electrical parts, deep corrosion, and anything they could not identify. The long rails were a little over 6 feet. Aaron laid 2 matching rails on blocks and placed new larch boards across them. "Almost the length of a picnic table," he said. It took 4 days to move and sort the load. After comparing holes and thickness, Levi marked the largest matching group type A. Bent or uncertain pieces went to rejection. He chose one straight type A pair for the first test. For the first prototype, Levi welded 2 steel leg assemblies directly to the bed rails. Aaron bolted the wooden top and seats above them. A diagonal brace connected the legs beneath the center. The completed table was heavy, square, and plain. Gray marks remained where the bed hooks had once locked into a headboard. The larch boards were new, smooth, and sealed for outdoor use. Aaron stood at one end and pushed sideways. The frame barely moved. They placed 4 feed sacks on the table, then 6, then 8. At just over 600 pounds of controlled weight, the left side remained level. Levi stepped back. "The rail is carrying it." Then Aaron pressed down on the outer edge of one seat to imitate the uneven force of someone standing up. A sharp click came from beneath the table. The left leg dropped less than an inch. Levi removed the weight and turned the frame over. A narrow crack had opened beside the weld where the leg met the old rail. It began at a punched mounting hole hidden beneath the welded plate. The weld itself looked solid. The steel beside it had failed. Sarah Coleman arrived 10 minutes later. She managed Maple Run Campground and had heard from Aaron's lumber supplier that the brothers were experimenting with picnic tables. She found the prototype upside down with a white chalk circle around the crack. "Is that the table?" she asked. Aaron looked at the lowered leg. It was. Sarah needed 6 new tables before fishing season. Her least expensive commercial option required a long delivery and cost more than she wanted to spend. She had hoped the brothers could build something local. "Can you weld another plate over it?" Levi could have covered the crack with more steel. He could not prove the next old hole would be in a safer place. "Not until I know why this one opened," he said. Sarah left without placing an order. Paul heard about the failure through a maintenance worker whose family camped at Maple Run. "I told you they were beds," he said when Aaron returned for the final load. The brothers did not answer. They cut the cracked section open and followed the line back to its beginning. The old mounting hole removed metal exactly where the welded leg plate ended. Heat from welding had not created the old hole, but the new design had placed bending force beside it. Each time the seat edge moved, that narrow strip tried to flex. Levi had treated a long rail as if every inch carried force in the same way. It did not. The next design used no welded leg connection on the reclaimed rails. Levi made 2 new saddle plates for each side. The plates reached across a longer section of steel and connected with bolts through verified areas. A separate gusset carried the leg force into the plate. Existing holes were either used deliberately or left outside the loaded connection. Nothing important ended beside an unknown opening. Aaron changed the wooden top at the same time. Instead of fixing every board tightly to the steel, he left small spaces for rainwater and ordinary wood movement. The seat supports remained new wood because their shape and condition needed to be repeatable. The brothers rebuilt the prototype. 600 pounds held. 800 pounds held. Levi pulled sideways on the top with a simple controlled load. The diagonal brace stopped the frame from changing shape. Aaron pressed each seat edge one at a time. No click came from beneath it. They removed the bolts and examined the holes. No line had stretched. No crack had started beside the plates. Sarah returned 2 days later. Levi showed her the failed rail before he showed her the finished table. He explained that the reclaimed steel supported the long frame, while new plates, fasteners, wood, and braces handled the connections they needed to control. "So it is not one old bed," Sarah said. "It is one tested table," Levi answered. Sarah paid $720 for the prototype and placed it at campsite 14, beside the creek. The first customers used it that weekend. 4 adults ate breakfast around it. 2 coolers rested on the seats while they packed their truck. The frame did not move. If you enjoy stories where a discarded object must survive a real test before anyone calls it useful, subscribe to the channel. The brothers had solved the cracked connection. But Maple Run's wet ground was about to reveal a failure their workshop floor could never show them. Rain began on Monday afternoon and continued through most of Tuesday night. Campsite 14 sat on packed soil covered with a thin layer of gravel. Water from the hill crossed the edge of the site before reaching the creek. The table remained uncovered through the storm. On Wednesday morning, Sarah walked the campground before opening the lower loop. She found the right side of the table almost 2 inches lower than the left. The steel had not bent. The bolts had not moved. One pair of narrow metal feet had cut through the wet gravel and entered the soft soil beneath it. When Sarah pushed the tabletop, the frame rocked from one diagonal corner to the other. No guest was using it. Sarah placed a closed sign on the site and sent a driver to the Esch farm. Levi and Aaron arrived before lunch with a level, a shovel, and a wagon jack. Aaron first looked uphill for moving water. Levi first looked beneath the sunken feet. Both men were right to do so. The site had a drainage problem, but campground tables could not demand a perfect concrete floor. Maple Run had gravel, soil, roots, and seasonal frost. If the table worked only on the brothers' flat workshop floor, it was not yet a campground table. Levi raised the frame and measured the contact area beneath each foot. The old bed rails spread weight along the table's length, but the new steel legs ended on 4 narrow edges. Each edge acted like the bottom of a shovel. The stronger frame had delivered its load to the weakest part of the ground. Aaron walked to an older picnic table nearby. Its wooden legs rested on 2 broad skids. The skids were worn, but they had not cut deeply into the soil. "We solved the table and forgot the earth," he said. The brothers took the prototype back. Aaron made 2 wide shoes from pressure-treated wood rated for ground contact. Each shoe ran across one end of the table and connected to the steel legs with replaceable bolts. The wider surface spread the load. If water and gravel damaged a shoe over time, a campground worker could change it without disturbing the reclaimed rails. Levi added a second diagonal brace lower in the frame. It did not force the table to sit level on a bad site, but it helped the rectangle remain square when one corner carried more force than another. They also drilled simple anchor openings in the new foot hardware. The campground could secure the table where local conditions required it without drilling through an old rail. The corrected table returned to campsite 14 on Friday. Before setting it down, Aaron redirected a shallow path of runoff away from the pad. The campground added fresh, compacted gravel. Then the brothers placed the broad shoes on the prepared surface. Sarah watched them load the table with water containers and feed sacks. The right side no longer cut into the ground. Levi raised one corner on a narrow board to imitate an uneven pad. The second brace kept the frame from twisting. The test did not prove the table could be abandoned in any mud hole. It proved the feet, frame, and site each had a clear job. Sarah kept the prototype at campsite 14 for 21 days. It went through another rain, 3 cold nights, a warm weekend, and repeated cleaning by the campground crew. The larchboards dried through the spaces Aaron had left. The bolts remained tight. The wooden shoes showed dirt, but no splitting. During the second weekend, an older couple stopped beside the table. The man used a wheelchair and could approach only the end because fixed seats ran along both sides. The tabletop extended several inches beyond the frame, but not far enough for comfortable knee space. Sarah mentioned it when the brothers returned for inspection. 4 of my sites are near the bathhouse, she said. I want tables that more people can use. Aaron could have removed 1 seat from the existing design. That would create open space, but the end brace still crossed beneath the top. A chair could approach, yet the frame would block the person's knees. The brothers built a second version. At one end, the top extended farther beyond the steel rails. The seat stopped short on that side. Levi moved the end brace inward and added gussets where the longer top created more leverage. Aaron tested the overhang with controlled downward weight and checked that the table did not tip when the opposite seats were empty. Sarah asked a local accessibility consultant to review dimensions and clearances before she accepted the design. The brothers did not call the table accessible until the intended space, approach, and site placement had been checked. Maple Run ordered 12 tables. 8 used the standard layout. 4 used the open-end design. The order was larger than anything the brothers had built from the nursing home steel. 1 prototype could be adjusted until every bolt fit. 12 tables required the same parts to meet again and again. Aaron made full-size wooden templates for the tabletop, seat supports, braces, and shoes. Levi made a drilling guide for Type A rails. Each reclaimed rail passed through 4 checks before it reached assembly. Was it straight? Were old holes and slots visible? Was the steel sound around the new connection areas? Did it belong to the same frame family as its partner? The last question seemed simple. It would become the greatest problem in the entire project. For the Maple Run order, the brothers used only Type A frames. The slots matched. The rail thickness remained consistent. The same saddle plate fit each pair. An adult nephew carried finished wood and cleaned the separate assembly area. Levi kept cutting, drilling, and controlled load testing with experienced workers. By the 7th table, the process had a steady rhythm. Rails were cleaned and inspected in Levi's shop. New plates were prepared in groups. Aaron cut and sealed the wooden parts. Final assembly happened beneath the open shed, where each completed table could be checked on a flat surface. 1 rail failed inspection because a straight-looking paint line hid a shallow bend. 2 more had deep wear around the original locking hooks. Those pieces went into the rejection rack instead of entering a deadline. On the 12th day, the full order stood along Maple Run's main road. Sarah placed 4 tables near the bathhouse, 3 along the creek loop, and 5 on higher wooded sites. Campground workers learned how to inspect the bolted plates, replace a wooden shoe, tighten accessible fasteners, and keep water from cutting beneath the sites. The 12 tables cost $9,360. That figure included new lumber, new steel plates, fasteners, finishing, transport, and labor. The bed rails were only one part of the value. Sarah did not advertise them as free tables made from old beds. She placed a small card in the campground office explaining that verified steel from decommissioned institutional frames had been rebuilt into tested picnic table bases. The wording was less dramatic than a miracle. It was also true. Near the end of March, Maple Run hosted a breakfast for owners of 6 nearby campgrounds. They met beneath a pavilion, but several walked through the lower loop afterward. One owner turned a table over to inspect the plates. Another photographed the replaceable shoes. A third measured the open end. The following morning, a message waited for Levi at the hardware store. Pine Hollow Campground wanted 18 tables before Memorial Day. By noon, Cedar Crossing had asked for 14. 2 days later, Blue Heron Family Camp requested a price for 24 more. The campgrounds had started calling, and the brothers were about to discover that most of the steel still stacked beneath their roof did not match the template that had made the first 13 tables possible. Levi and Aaron placed the 3 campground requests on their kitchen table. Pine Hollow needed 18 tables. Cedar Crossing needed 14. Blue Heron wanted 24. including 8 with the open-end layout. Together, the orders required 56 tables before the beginning of the busiest camping season. Aaron counted the remaining Type A frames. There were 16 complete sets. The brothers had known that several frame styles existed. What they had not understood was how soon the first style would run out. They pulled one rail from the Type B stack. It was the same general length and almost the same height. The old slots looked close enough to the Type A pattern that a person walking past would call them identical. Levi placed the drilling guide over the rail. One new connection point landed less than half an inch from the end of an old slot. If he drilled there, the bolt would pull against a narrow bridge of steel. Moving the hole would shift the leg and change the table's balance. Using the old slot would leave too much room around the fastener. The template that had made production faster had become unsafe on the wrong rail. Aaron checked a second Type B frame. Its lower steel lip was narrower. The original saddle plate touched along one edge but left a small gap along the other. Under a hard bolt, the plate could bend before it spread the load. The brothers stopped production after the first 16 new Type A tables. Pine Hollow expected delivery in 11 days. Stacks of wood tops were already sealed. Seat supports were ready. Campground owners had prepared sites. Yet dozens of reclaimed rails could not accept the connection the brothers had tested. Paul Mercer drove past the farm that afternoon and saw the unfinished tables beneath the shed. "Looks like the old beds finally ran out," he said. "The beds did not run out," Levi answered. "The first pattern did." That night, the brothers placed one rail from every group across the shop floor. They counted 29 complete Type A frames in the original load. 13 had become Maple Run tables, leaving 16. Type B contained 74 frames. Type C contained 55. 22 frames had already been rejected because of deep corrosion, bent load areas, uncertain residue, or damage around critical connections. The numbers totaled 180. The mistake was no longer hidden in the pile. It was visible in 3 rows. Aaron wanted one universal plate that could fit every rail. Levi resisted. A plate with too many holes could place a fastener beside old damage or tempt a worker to choose the wrong opening. They decided on 3 connection families instead. The tabletop, seat height, wooden shoes, and outside dimensions would remain the same. Each rail family would receive its own saddle plate, drilling guide, bolt location, and inspection card. Type B came first because it offered enough frames to complete the campground orders. Levi made a wider backing plate that supported the narrower lower lip. The new bolt pattern avoided every old slot by a measured distance. Aaron kept the leg position unchanged by shifting the connection inside the plate instead of moving the entire leg. They assembled one Type B table and marked it with blue chalk. It passed the vertical load test. During the sideways test, however, the frame moved more than the Type A table. The rail had not bent. The plate had not slipped. The narrower lip allowed a small amount of twist along the table's length. Levi added a short cross brace between the saddle plate and the lower center brace. The next test produced much less movement. He repeated it on a second Type B frame before approving the pattern. Type C remained untested and stayed out of production. That decision cost inventory, but it protected the deadline from another unknown design. The brothers reorganized the work beneath the shed. White chalk marked Type A. Blue marked Type B. Red meant stop and return the piece to inspection. Aaron's templates never crossed between the 2 active lines. Levi kept the different saddle plates in separate wooden boxes. Every pair of rails carried the same family mark before new wood approached it. The first day after the change felt slower. By the 3rd day, the new system was faster than the old one, because no worker had to guess. The Pine Hollow order left on time. 9 tables went to a wooded loop above the lake. 6 went near pull-through sites. 3 open-end tables stood beside level paths near the bathhouse. The campground manager checked each wooden shoe after installation and anchored the tables only where the site plan required it. Cedar Crossing received its 14 tables 4 days later. Blue Heron's order took longer because the 8 open-end tops needed additional bracing and separate inspection. Aaron refused to shorten the test simply because the campground had already advertised new equipment. The final Blue Heron truck left the farm 2 days before its promised date. Then a spring storm crossed the region. Heavy rain fell through one night, followed by wind strong enough to bring small branches down across several camp roads. At Pine Hollow, water washed loose gravel from two low campsites. Staff closed the loop and inspected every table before allowing guests to return. One table had shifted several inches because runoff moved the gravel beneath it. The broad wooden shoes remained attached. The steel frame stayed square. Workers restored the site, replaced the washed gravel, and reset the same table. At another site, a fallen branch split one seat board. The reclaimed rails did not need to be cut apart. The campground removed 4 accessible bolts, installed a replacement seat, and returned the table to service that afternoon. Those 2 events became more valuable than a perfect photograph. They showed what happened after ordinary damage. The system did not depend on every campground remaining dry, every branch remaining in a tree, or every wooden part lasting forever. It placed replaceable pieces where weather and use were most likely to reach them. Pine Hollow's manager described the repairs during a regional campground meeting. Lake Ridge ordered 8 tables. Fox Run ordered 4. By early August, the brothers had delivered 81 tables to 6 campgrounds. Some used Type A rails, most used Type B. Type C frames remained in storage until Levi completed a separate connection pattern and repeated the full tests. The campground invoices totaled $67,200. That was gross revenue, not free profit. The tables required new outdoor lumber, new plates, bolts, finish, transport, site visits, rejected steel, and months of labor. The old frames did not become money merely because Willow Ridge gave them away. Their value appeared only after the brothers separated 3 designs, found 2 different failures, built repeatable connections, and proved the tables on real ground. Paul Mercer visited Maple Run near the end of summer. He found the original table still standing at campsite 14. Its top carried small scratches from coolers and camp stoves. Dirt had darkened the wooden shoes. The bolted frame remained square. Sarah showed him the chalk mark beneath one rail. "That was one of ours," Paul said. "Part of it was," Sarah answered. Willow Ridge had not given away 180 finished picnic tables. It had given away 180 questions. Which rails were straight? Which connections could be trusted? Which designs belonged together? And which pieces needed to be rejected, no matter how many customers were waiting? The brothers answered those questions one test at a time. They did not hide the first cracked weld. Levi mounted that short rail section above the metal bench. They did not hide the sunken feet. Aaron kept one narrow steel foot beside the wide wooden shoe. They did not pretend all bed frames were identical. 3 drilling guides hung on 3 separate hooks, even after the orders were complete. The following spring, Willow Ridge created a small outdoor visiting area behind its dining room. Paul asked the brothers for 2 open-end tables. Levi selected verified Type B rails from the remaining stock. Aaron used the same replaceable shoes and weather-spaced top that had survived Maple Run. The care center paid for the new lumber, hardware, and labor. On the day of delivery, one of the old residents rested her hand on the steel beneath the table. "Was this really part of a bed?" she asked. Aaron nodded. "It carried people before," he said. "Now it brings them together." If you want more stories about old materials earning a new purpose through real tests, subscribe and join us for the next one. Because the brothers did not save those frames by refusing to throw them away. They saved them by finding every place the old steel could fail before the campgrounds began to call.
Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel and join us for the next one. See you soon.